5 years ago, come September, Pope Francis came in a Fiat to our St. Matthew's Cathedral to meet with the bishops of the United States. Later that afternoon, at the Basilica, the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, he canonized the saint whose feast day we celebrate today, Junipero Serra. Remarkable, beloved, and controversial figure. I'll now try to sketch his life story as it developed. He was born on a farm on the island of Mallorca on November the 23rd, 1713. That same day, he was christened Miguel Jose. A frail boy, he often studied and demonstrated a tremendous thirst for knowledge and zeal for the faith. He then was sent to the capital at Palma, where he entered a Franciscan novitiate. At age 16, he formally applied for admission to the order, but this was not approved because, reportedly, he was too short. Finally, he was accepted to the novitiate, but was ill most of that year. Then, in 1731, he was officially accepted into the Franciscan order. He took the name Fray Junipero after the friar known for his foolish simplicity, who was a dear companion of St. Francis of Assisi. Inspired by the writings of St. Paul, Serra took as his famous motto, Siempre adelante, nunca atrás. Always go forward, never turn back. Brother Junipero was ordained in November 1737 at the age of 24. He then taught philosophy, earned a doctorate in sacred theology, and in the following years taught theology there at one of the top universities in all of Europe. He had a command of sacred scripture and was recognized for his eloquent sermons. Serra's goal was to be a missionary in the, quote, New World, unquote. With permission, a 5,000-mile voyage to Mexico in New Spain then began. First, they sailed to the Spanish mainland, and then, leaving from Cadiz at the age of 35, he went forth. In 1749, Serra landed at Veracruz in Mexico. He insisted on walking the over 200 miles to Mexico City, then the most prominent city in North America, which he reached on the last day of 1749. He went first to the great shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Unfortunately, in his journey, he had been bitten by a venomous tropical insect, and this was followed by severe swelling in his leg. And this incident hindered Serra's walking, and the pain lasted all his life. Initially, Serra was assigned to a mission to the northeast in the Goita Mountains. And there he learned the native language and joined in teaching not only about God, but also how to live a more productive life. Here he remained 9 years to 1759. He then returned to Mexico City and worked as an itinerant missionary, traveling about throughout southern Mexico. When the Jesuits were banished worldwide in 1767, Serra's reputation made him the candidate to take over the missions formerly run by the Jesuits in Moa, Baja, California. After a few years there, he was then tasked to push north to Upper California, where eventually this venture produced 21 missions in California. The first 9, from San Diego to San Francisco, occurred during his death, which occurred in 1784. On this day, July the 1st, in the year 1769, Serra could first see the harbor of what became San Diego, where he would establish the first of the missions in the present-day state of California. The following May, in 1770, Serra sailed north to Monterey, where Mission San Carlos Borromeo was established as California's second mission. There, as normally the case, a presidio was built as a protective military outpost. The mission was moved after a year to a more promising spot on the Rio Carmelo, and this Carmel mission became his home and administrative headquarters then for the last 14 years of his life. 3 additional missions, San Antonio de Padua, San Gabriel, and San Luis Obispo, soon followed. The chapel was always the first building built. There were also storehouses, workshops, mills, and barracks for the soldiers. The Indians were instructed in many trades and skills and worked on improving the missions. On a tour of the missions, Serra was disappointed after a few years with the deteriorating condition and military abuse by the Spanish soldiers of the Indians. He then made a difficult trip down to Mexico City to confer with the Spanish viceroy. There he prepared a 32-page petition which outlined the needs of the missions and the problems. The viceroy was impressed and approved what was to become the first California Bill of Rights. And it remained California's civil code until Spain gave Mexico its independence in 1821. In 1774, Serra returned to Carmel, where he concentrated on making converts, inviting the Indians to the missions. And then, shortly afterwards, word came that the mission back in San Diego had been attacked and destroyed by Indians, who were upset by continuous abuse by the Presidio soldiers there. Serra requested that the viceroy forgive the Indians so that they may live better lives. In 1776, new missions were formed at San Francisco and then at San Luis Capistrano. His goal was to have a mission one day apart from one another. During his lifetime, even with a sore leg, sometimes walked this distance when not on a burro. Although not a bishop, Serra was granted a 10-day faculty to perform confirmations by the Vatican at the various missions, confirming some 5,000 in all, and baptizing over 6,000 Indians as well. Showing signs of poor health, by 1784, Serra slowly faded and then died on August the 28th. He had been a Franciscan for almost 54 years, a priest for 45, and a missionary for the 35 years of the second half of his life. Father Serra was beatified by Pope John Paul II in 1988, who called him, quote, an exemplary model of a selfless evangelizer, unquote. His cause for canonization was as a source of controversy with some leaders of the Native American community, who objected to the treatment by the missionaries of those whom they sought to convert. Serra himself, however, defended the Native Americans against abuse and exploitation and stressed their equality before God. Canonization by Pope Francis then followed in 2015. A well-known figure, sometimes referred to as the, quote, apostle of California, unquote, there are many statues of him in that state, and significantly right here in the rotunda of our capital in Washington. The Serra Club, which encourages religious vocations, is under his patronage and now boasts thousands of members. Yet dissension has surfaced from time to time, with some Indians and academics criticizing his life, the state of Indian existence around the missions, and Serra's acceptance of whipping as corporal punishment. They charge he was part of the brutal colonial system of the Spanish Empire, which destroyed native culture, mistreated the Indians people, and stole their land. At the same time, his defenders, many of whom are Catholic Indians, presently in California, recognize the context of his time, his enormous personal sacrifices and religious zeal, and his opposition to punitive military abuse of the Indians because of his concern about their physical and spiritual well-being. In his fine book, quote, Journey to the Sun, unquote, about Serra and the founding of California, Gregory Orfalea notes that the growth of the Serra influence began right off with the frenzy with which mourners, right after his death, snatched parts of his clothing, belongings, and even his hair. Just last week, a unique statue of the saint was torn down in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. Archbishop Cordileone condemned the action as blasphemous. And then a few days later, a group attempted to do the same in Ventura, but they were prevented by a gathering mainly of youth. Audacious in many ways, venturing to go where few would dare, popular to many, but attacked by others, Saint Junipero Serra remains probably the most well-known of the saints who evangelized in what has become the present United States. We seek the intercession of Saint Junipero Serra, not just for California and vocations, but for recognition of the dignity of all God's creation, especially Native Americans.